The UK and the EU have concluded a trade deal. This marks the end of a 4-year negotiation process. What does the future of the EU and UK relationship look like? After a process which has seen 3 prime ministers, one which saw Britain vote to leave the EU, one which failed to see the UK Parliament accept her deal, and one that finally managed to negotiate a deal that was acceptable to the proponents of hard Brexit, the United Kingdom, which officially left the European Union in January 2020, has now secured a trade deal with the European Union. What's important to understand is how Brexit took place and what the content of the Brexit deal was. The Brexit deal was actually divided into 2 parts. One was the withdrawal agreement, which passed and entered into force on February 1st, 2020, and set in stone the terms with which Britain would leave the European Union. This included how much the UK still had to pay the EU as part of its commitment under international law, otherwise known as the Divorce Bill, and it also guaranteed the rights of UK citizens in Europe and vice versa. And lastly, it cemented the status of Northern Ireland, which had sought above all to avoid a hard border between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. While Northern Ireland remains part of the UK's trade jurisdiction, it now follows EU regulation on goods, meaning that in everything but name, there is a border across the Irish Sea. The other part of the Brexit deal was the trade relationship between Britain and the UK, which formed the cornerstone of the post-Brexit relationship. This is the part that was so hard to find due to one notable disagreement: regulatory alignment. The EU's main goal was to create a level playing field between British and European companies by having common labour and environmental standards, as well as rules on government subsidies to industry. Additionally, to avoid the country undercutting the European single market over time, the UK would have had to stay in sync with European standards in what was known as the Ratchet Clause. The UK had left the European Union on the platform of taking back control, and this regulatory oversight formed one of the main obstacles to the deal. While the European Union initially wanted to have a watchdog under European law to oversee British rules, it has made an important concession. While the UK will have to follow principles set out by the trade deal, the overseer of competition will fall under British law. Now that the trade deal's done, the future relationship between the 2 blocs will remain similar in many ways to what it was before. Britain has often blamed the EU for its internal problems. It has served as a scapegoat for many years. Even Boris Johnson, the British Prime Minister, contributed to the creation of myths about the European Union during his career as a journalist. Now that the UK is no longer part of the EU, this is likely to continue, though this time because of the future friction between Europe and the United Kingdom. While the EU and the UK are set to remain important trading and security partners, and the UK is still part of the European continent due to the stubborn nature of geography, the fact is that the UK has left the EU. No matter what happens, standards and laws will diverge, leading to frustration and even confrontation, particularly on trade. After a deal was found, French President Emmanuel Macron has said that Europe will make sure that regulatory alignment will remain, suggesting that divergence is expected and hinting at some trouble in the future of the relationship. Industry has and is leaving Britain for the EU, particularly banking from London, which has shifted billions in assets to Germany. Britain, which is now a 3rd country to the EU, will be treated as such, and potentially have real reason to complain about the EU's unfairness. This could turn the relationship poisonous as both sides have the possibility to sabotage and undermine the other, yet both have much to lose economically should the deal fall apart. Instead, it is likely that both sides will tolerate each other, and if Brexit negotiations are any indication, engage in posturing to the last minute before coming to a compromise. Brexit will have significant impact on the internal politics of the United Kingdom for the years to come. Just as Britain left the European Union, support for the EU has reached an all-time high. Politicians in the previous general election have attempted to appropriate cancelling Brexit as an electoral issue, particularly the Liberal Democrats under Jo Swinson, which led a failed campaign on the issue. Despite their status as a 3rd minor party in the UK, they are reconciling Britain's departure from the EU with the ambition to rejoin. The popularity of the EU in the UK, if it proves long-lasting and survives the rocky relationship the 2 are set to have, will likely be seized upon by one of the main political parties, which might seek rapprochement with the EU once again. This is already the case in Scotland, which is seeing revived calls for independence. The Scottish Nationalist Party has linked Scottish independence to EU membership. Scottish independence is now as popular as ever, and Scotland's intention to rejoin the EU is clear. It has passed legislation to follow EU regulation despite Brexit to facilitate their membership, should they ever have the possibility to join. The UK Parliament, which must greenlight any future referendum on Scottish independence before it is held, is unlikely to give in. The 2014 referendum on Scottish independence was meant to settle the question of independence for a generation, but the EU question and Boris Johnson's unpopularity there have proven so divisive that the question has already now re-emerged. This will further acerbate relations between Scotland and the British government, and is a sticking point the EU will need to be careful not to trigger. Northern Ireland faces a similar dilemma as part of the Good Friday Agreement, which brought peace to the island after decades of violence between Catholics and Protestants. It has the possibility to request a referendum to reunite with the rest of Ireland. While Northern Ireland has traditionally been pro-UK, a 2019 poll has found that Brexit has polarized the population around EU membership. For the first time in history, opinions seem to favor Irish reunification, with the young favouring the European Union and union with Ireland over union with Britain. The leader of Sinn Féin, and the main voice for reunification in Ireland, Mary-Lou McDonald, has said that she expects Irish reunification to take place within the next 10 years. While the EU would support moves for Irish reunification in the same way it did Germany's, and would welcome Scotland if it left the UK legally, it would not openly support it. The EU does not want to be seen as responsible for the breakup of the United Kingdom, which would undoubtedly sour the cross-channel relationship and hamper cooperation on trade and defence. On foreign policy, Britain has announced ambitions to become a global Britain, which was one of the slogans for the Brexit campaign. So far, most of the action Britain has undertaken is damage control, rather than a new foreign policy doctrine. The Global Britain Initiative has managed to clinch continuation trade agreements with countries that have EU trade deals, and it is currently negotiating deals with those that didn't have one with the EU. While the UK aims to pivot to Asia, one of its main gateways to the continent is quickly shutting. Hong Kong, a former British colony, is quickly being absorbed into the rest of China, and the independence of its financial markets are being called into question. Cooperation with India, the largest democracy in the world, with strong cultural ties to Britain, for better or worse, should have been the easiest. But immigration, one of the main factors that led to Brexit, put a dent in that. Britain wants markets for its goods and services, while India wants access to the UK for its workers, something incompatible with the idea of Brexit. Global Britain in fact underlines the contradiction at the heart of Brexit, the anti-globalist sentiment that started it all, and the search for new global partners and opportunities. Britain has cut back its developmental aid program, but at the same time opened its doors to Hong Kongese immigrants whose freedoms are being suppressed in China. It is looking for trade deals abroad while leaving the world's largest free trade bloc. Resolving the contradiction at the heart of British politics is key to making Global Britain a success. Now that it has left the EU, it will have to re-embrace its internationalist and globalist identity or shrink in on itself and live in the shadow of its former glory. Yet it is hard to argue about the potential Britain has internationally. The British economy is dynamic, has good access to the EU market, and the freedom to strike trade deals with its network of partner countries, particularly the Commonwealth. It has strong outposts in the Pacific, which is the next focus point for Britain, a network of allies and partners, and even a naval facility in Singapore from which to project influence. Its efforts will be welcomed with open arms by the United States, but also other countries such as Japan, South Korea, and India, which wish to create counterweights to Chinese hegemony in the region. By all means, Britain has the tools to be successful by going it alone, if only it can address the contradiction at the heart of Brexit. These aspects all lead to one question: will Britain rejoin the European Union? Britain rejoining the EU is a distinct possibility. EU politicians have in the past welcomed the idea, and a majority of Britons now consider themselves Remainers. Yet that remains to be determined by the relationship that Britain has with both the EU and its other international partners in the coming years. If Britain is sidelined by the international community, either due to its own contradictions or because it has become a minor player, it will have no choice but to foster stronger relations with Europe. Danish Finance Minister Kristian Jensen has said in 2017 during Brexit negotiations that there are two kinds of European nations. There are small nations, and there are countries that have not yet realized that there are small nations. Britain could be too small to make a place for itself in the world, making the EU its last refuge. If Europe bullies Britain, through regular disputes regarding the newly found trade relationship, or by pushing the compromise in Northern Ireland to the brink, or supporting moves for Scottish independence, Britain will be able to blame the EU for its woes, bolstering another idea that has underpinned Brexit, that the EU cannot be trusted. Britain has made a decision to leave the European Union, one that was not economical but political, over fear-mongering and scapegoating by British politicians on sometimes real EU flaws over the past 40 years. Britain rejoining the EU would, however, be an economic one, pressured by the international community, which no longer has a place for Britain on its own. Yet the biggest obstacle to Britain rejoining will probably become if it starts negotiations. As a member since 1973, the UK was able to negotiate a number of special arrangements. These included its stay outside the Schengen area, the continued use of the pound, and a series of rebates to its budget contribution to the European Union. If the UK were to rejoin, it would be unlikely that it would be able to do so under the same terms that it enjoyed before it left, leading to bitter discussions and polarizing British society once again. This was Into Europe. If you liked this video, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to receive the latest updates and analysis on European news.